And good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's presentation on putting it all together, a comprehensive home exercise routine for quadriplegics presented by Rach. We have a very compact, full of great stuff for you to witness tonight. I know you're going to enjoy it. So as always, these presentations are made possible thanks to the generous donors of ours. So we're grateful to them. Number two, everyone has been muted in order to eliminate any background distractions. We will have a Q&A session at the conclusion of Rach's presentation. And so if you have any questions that you would wish to pose to Rach, use the chat field on your Zoom screen and I'll ask all those questions at the end. And finally, as we always do, all these presentations are recorded and we will make them available to everyone who has registered. We have our paraplegics presentation tomorrow night. So I'm going to wait until we do that one, and then I'll send both the quadriplegics and the paraplegics video recordings to everyone on Thursday morning. So you'll have that for your consumption in case if you need to jump off the presentation tonight at any time, you won't miss a thing. So without further ado, let me introduce Rach, who's a nationally certified Pilates teacher, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and a movement teacher specializing in working with people with neurological deficits, especially spinal cord injuries. And was also recently certified and licensed as a massage therapist here in the state of California. So welcome back again, Rachel, for one of 2 nights in a row.
Awesome, cool. As always, thanks for hosting Franklin and Orca SCI. I love these workshops because they really give us an opportunity to dive into more of the educational component. Okay, give me a moment here. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm actually just curious, out of a show of hands, at least for those of you who have your cameras on, has anyone here been to all 16 of the workshops that I've taught? You could raise your hands, you could give a thumbs up. Okay, all right. I just was curious. I just was curious if we had anyone that's been to all of them. So tonight is really going to be about taking those 16 workshops that I've taught over the past 16 months and putting it into one sample, and I want to emphasize the word sample because this is going to look so different for everybody, but one sample exercise routine, which we're all going to go through together. So it's going to be a really short slide deck, and then we're going to jump right into the movement piece. What was the other thing I was going to say? Yes. So for the purposes of having taught all of those past workshops, I'm not really going to go much into the why and the how and the science and the reasoning behind everything. I'm going to reference my prior 16 workshops for that. So, but if you have questions about, after today's session, if you have questions about, hey, why did you do this before this? Or could you substitute this for this? I'd be happy to answer those. But the why and the how and everything, definitely check out those prior workshops and I can point you to which ones might be the most appropriate. Okay, so what have you learned so far? So let's just go over a quick review of what those past workshops have looked like and kind of get a sneak peek of what we're going to be doing tonight. It's a little bigger for myself. Okay, so that very first workshop we did was about mindful movement, and we did a little bit of breath work. So we're going to go through some of that tonight. How to safely and effectively stretch, especially through spasms, tone, spasticity, things like that. We talked about the visual system and the vestibular system, which is that inner ear unit that works with your proprioception. It tells you where you are in time and space, and how those two systems work together and how they actually affect your movement more than you might think and more than a lot of other things you affect your movement. So, you know, we're usually focusing on moving the body, but sometimes doing some visual and vestibular drills can actually solve a lot of our problems. We did a workshop on bed and or floor-based movement to help you come to a taller, stronger seated or standing position. This is actually the one workshop we're not going to really do as much tonight. The theories in that workshop I'm going to apply to today's workout, but this workout is going to be completely from a seated position. So we're not going to get into too much of the floor stuff tonight. We did a workshop on the shoulders, how to take care of them, how to strengthen them. And then I did a couple of workshops on the core. What is the core? How do you work it? Not the traditional, maybe what you're saying on TV or on YouTube channels. And then finding the connection between what a strong neck and a strong core looks like, and how those two are very deeply connected. We did a whole workout on like a TheraBand exercise routine. And then we talked about how your hands and your feet affect your movement. Tonight, we're really just going to be focusing on the hands. If you're interested in doing some foot things, we'll be doing that tomorrow night. We did a lot of self-release techniques, 2 workshops on this, and we're going to be pulling some of that in tonight as well. And then the role of a good old myofascial meridians, which I think I've talked about in every single one of these workshops, and how to work with them during movement. So just as a reminder, those meridians are basically the connective tissue pathways of our body. They encapsulate our muscles, they're intertwined with our vasculature system, our nervous system, our lymph system. So really working more with patterned movement as opposed to isolated movement. And then lastly, the importance of spinal rotation, how to spinally rotate and how to warm up. Okay, so just talking a little bit about you're going to see the exercises we're going to be doing, as to why I picked the order and the flow, so that when you're creating your home exercise program, you know generally what you want to include in it, and what is going to be really important for you. Again, I really want to emphasize that tonight is just a very simple exercise routine that you can do from your chair or from a seated position. Whenever I'm working with somebody one-on-one, or sometimes even in classes, especially when the class is small enough, sometimes what I have in my head for how I think the session is going to go and what we're going to work on completely changes. In fact, I would actually say maybe about 50% of the time, depending on what the client comes in with and how they're feeling that day, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of the things, the order and the goal of the session might change for you. So you might be really consistent and you might find a really solid order that works well for you. But I just want to encourage you that although I have reasoning for my order, it's always, always okay. In fact, I encourage you to sometimes switch up the order of how you're doing something to see if it helps you in some way, shape, or form. One of the themes that I have woven throughout this past year and a half is strongly encourage you all to explore, to feel your own body, to be able to sense your own body, and to get creative and explore. The more that you wiggle around and try new things and create new challenges for you and your nervous system, the more you're going to discover about your body. There we go. Okay. So first thing first, though, when getting ready to do any kind of a movement session, and I just say healing in a very general sense, it requires a calm nervous system. If we go into any kind of a workout where we're kind of on this heightened, I think of it as like vibrating on a higher level, this heightened nervous system, we're living in our sympathetic nervous system, our fight and flight nervous system. Before we start any of these movement sessions, especially when it's really intentional, mindful movement, like I've been teaching you this past year and a half, that kind of movement, that kind of healing really requires a calm nervous system. So we always start with something, a kind of a a body scan, breath work, release work, whatever it might be, to first and foremost help settle and calm the nervous system, because then the body can be more receptive to movement. If the body is not receptive to movement, we're stressed, we're angry, whatever it might be, we're usually tensing, we're holding, whether we're aware of it or not. So the very general flow of these movement sessions that I encourage you to explore, but how we're going to be working through it tonight, is we're always going to start with the body scan. So this is working on something called your interoception, which is basically your body's ability to feel within itself. The more aware we are of our bodies and the higher our interoception, where we can sense, we can feel, we can breathe, we can calm our nervous system, the better our movement is going to be. So that's first things first. And then relax. That can be with breath work. That can be with any one of the many things that I have given you to help calm the nervous system, like body tapping or humming, which we're also going to be doing tonight. And then release work. I think release work can be sprinkled anytime through a session. You can do it after a really hard movement. You could do it after the session, but I also really recommend at the very least doing it before the session. It can help release some of that stickiness that your fascia might be holding, your connective tissue might be holding on to. It can help calm the nervous system, but it just gives you more space. It gives your joints, it gives your muscles, your soft tissue more range of motion to play with. If we can soften all of those things before you move, your movement is going to be bigger, greater, more connected, and you're going to be more aware of it. And then we want to really jump into improving your sensory input. I've gave you a bunch of tools for this with the self-release techniques, working with the visual and with the vestibular system, again, which we'll definitely do tonight. But the more that we can sharpen and improve the information coming into our eyes, into our bodies, into all of our sensory receptors, the more efficient motor output we're going to be able to create. In other words, the better you're going to be able to move. Okay, and then lastly, and this really comes with the whole movement part of everything that I teach, is you want to move as many parts of you as possible. This saying, this phrase comes from one of my favorite biomechanists, Katie Bowman, who is just a big fan of move every part of you. It might just be your eyes darting back and forth. It might be your neck. It might be your shoulders. It might be your whole trunk. It might be your legs if you've got movement in your legs. But we want to move as many parts of you in as many directions as possible. If you think of one joint, for example, the shoulder joint, what are all of the ways that shoulder joint moves? And can we move that one joint in all of the ways? Okay, so we're just going to talk through this, and then we're gonna jump in, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. So like I said, we're gonna start with a body scan, do a little bit of breath work. I have this in here as a check recheck. So it's always nice whenever you do a movement session, and this is more important, especially when you start to do this work, so that you see what kinds of things are actually helping you. Are they hurting you, or are they not doing anything for you? This especially applies to the release work, the visual work, and the vestibular work. If you're doing some of these drills and your movement is actually getting worse, if you do an overhead raise and you're like, actually that got worse for me, then something needs to change. If it got better, awesome, we're going to keep doing it. So we'll do kind of a quick check and recheck in the beginning and then at the end of class. We're going to do some release work, the visual and vestibular drills. We're going to work on the neck a little bit. And then Bartinieff is, so that's a method based off of a movement practitioner that her name was Irmgard Bartinieff. And that is one of the workshops that I taught early on. But just to say that that core distal and head tail spinal movements is, again, we're just trying to move all of the all of the joints of our spine in as many directions as possible: flexion, extension, rotation, lateral translation. So we're going to go through all of those also. We're going to work on the shoulders, of course, and then we're going to end with our check and our recheck. Okay, but again, as we're going through this session, I want you to sensing, feeling, exploring. If I try this, does it change anything? If I change my breath, does it change anything? It might be kind of hard to try in this one session, but I encourage you to keep playing and exploring outside of this class. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing here so you can just see me. Just give me 1 second to get this set up. Okay. Great. Have to get all of the screens fitting in here. Okay, so I'm going to start from a seated position here, and then I'm going to transition. I have a wheelchair behind me, lent to me by one of my very generous clients. I'm going to transition to this, but just so you can really see what we're going to be doing, a little bit of head neck release work. I'm going to stay kind of zoomed into the camera, and then I'll be moving around. Okay, so we're going to start at the top of the list, and we're just going to go through what this sample routine will look like. Just as one more reminder here, when you're playing with this at home, you can make this workout possibly as short as 15 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes if you cut a couple of things out, or you can make it as long as 45 minutes to an hour. So, but I would say for most of this, again, you're just trying to move as many parts of you as possible. So if you only have 15 minutes, maybe you're only doing 5 to 10 reps of all of these exercises. Maybe you're skipping some of the shoulder ones with a TheraBand because it's not convenient for you or you don't have the right setup. But if you can move as much of you as possible in, say, 15, 30, 45 minutes, your body's going to thank you in the short term, and it for sure is going to thank you in the long term. But again, just really want to encourage folks to play with this after the class and see what feels right for you. Change the order, change the reps, play with the breath work there. Okay, all right, so here we go. So just coming into, oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let me just talk you through the equipment I want you to have. The only equipment you're going to need tonight are 2 pencils or 2 pens, something that's easy for you to hold. And I've got fancy pens and pencils here that have letters, I guess no numbers, that just have letters on them. If you've got something like a Sharpie, just some kind of a pen or pencil that has writing on it. We might not use the writing tonight, but I can give you tips on how sometimes it's nice to have letters so your eye has a very particular point on that pen or pencil to look at. Okay, so 2 pen or pencils with writing, and then a TheraBand, and I don't know if you can see this here. I've got mine wedged into the door, or I should really say a TheraTube. I'm using this yellow TheraTube. There's links to this in my prior workshops, and I'm going to be using my Velcro elbow cuffs as we get into that. If you have something more like a TheraBand, either with loops on the end for your hands or anything like that, or if it works for you to just wrap your hand or your wrist around the band and or your elbow, then you don't have to do this fancy TheraTube setup. So just a couple of options. You can do the band, the tubing, and then the pencils. Okay, and that's all you're going to need. Okay. Just switch so I can see all of you here. Okay, great. All right. So we're just going to start in a seated position here. And I want you to come up to some kind of a proper seated position. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look perfect, but just one where you can really feel yourself being supported by the chair and we're not just sinking back into the chair. Okay. I'm going to have you close your eyes. And we're just going to start with a really simple body scan, walking all the way from our head to our toes. For those of you that don't have the sensation or awareness in maybe your trunk or the lower part of your body, that is totally fine. But I want to invite you to think about, if I could feel this, what might it feel like? And perhaps instead of feeling it from the inside out, you can place your hands on that area. You can place your hands on your thighs, your knees, etc. Okay, so we'll close the eyes. And we're just going to start by coming into your breath to start. So I want you to put both hands, and you're going to place both hands over the low belly. And I want you to find what we call a diaphragmatic breath. So just finding a nice low belly breath. When you inhale, you might feel your hands press away with your belly. And when you exhale, your belly and your hands drift back in towards your spine. Inhale, everything pushes out. And exhale, everything drifts back in. Inhale, it pushes out. And exhale, it pulls back in. Stay with that breath. And just notice if it's hard for you to find that belly breath. This diaphragmatic breathing can be really challenging for folks, depending on your injury level. But just inviting that breath all the way down into your sit bones, into your legs. And you're just thinking about avoiding the chest breath. So feel free to even put one hand on the chest and one hand on the belly. And the goal is to keep the chest hand still while the belly hand breathes with you. You're going to stay with that breath. And we're just going to find a body scan. So just noticing how these parts of your body are feeling. And we'll start at the top of the head, moving down through the jaws, maybe noticing if you're holding any tension in your jaws or your cheeks. How does your neck feel right now? Feel free to wiggle these areas around too if you want to move the neck around. And then how do the tops of your shoulders feel? How do the backs of your shoulders feel? How do your arms, your forearms, and your hands feel? Can you sense what's going on in the belly region? Do you feel any sensations in your mid back, in your low back? How are your hips feeling right now? And feel free to touch these areas if it's hard for you to sense these spots. Your legs, your knees. Maybe you can feel your calves or your feet. Okay, let's take one more inhale here. And one more exhale. And then we'll open the eyes. Okay. So we're going to come into a little bit of that release work. So I just want you to take either your fingertips or your knuckles, and you're going to find this area just under your collarbones. And you're going to find this really gentle tapping under both collarbones. And as you do that, we're going to add a hum. Okay, so lips are closed, just doing this through nasal breathing through your nose. You're going to take an inhale and then exhale. You're going to go all the way to the end of that breath, all the way to the end of your exhale. When you get all the way to the end, take another inhale and do that hum 2 more times. Might be on your last hum there. And just noticing how this area feels for you, the chest, this area under the collarbones. This can get really tight for a lot of people. Okay, go ahead and release that. Shake the hands out. Okay, and now we're going to come to the hands. And I just want you to start, whether you've got open or closed fist, you're going to rub your hands together. Create a little bit of heat between your hands or your knuckles. Rub the back of your hands. Yep. And then again, whether you're using an open hand or a closed hand, I want you to rub each finger now. So I'm just going to give each finger, if you can access each finger, a rub on the top, if you can get on the inside, and if you can get the tip of the finger, get the tip of the finger. We have a lot of meridians that start and stop at the tip of our finger. So just giving maybe 7 or 8 rubs to each finger on the inside, the top, the bottoms, and the tip if you can manage. And then go ahead and switch hands. So if you took my hand workshop, I talk a lot about how much real estate the brain uses for sensory information from our hands, from our mouths, and from our vestibular system and our faces. So when we stimulate these areas, especially the face, which we're going to do in a moment, we're stimulating a lot of those cranial nerves. And the more cranial nerves we can stimulate, the calmer the nervous system gets and the sharper that sensory input becomes as it enters our body. Okay, go ahead and shake that out with the hands. You're going to take your ears, okay, and depending on grip strength or not, if you have grip strength, you're going to grab your earlobe and you're going to pull down and back behind you. It's a gentle tug. Only tug as much as you need to where the ear tugs back. If grip strength is challenging, you could take your knuckle, put it again gently into the center of your ear and traction your ears in the same direction, down and back behind you. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab the tops of the ears. We're going to pull up and back behind. Or you can use your knuckles to traction the ears up and back behind. Okay, so whatever is accessible for you. Okay, good. Go and release that. We're going to do one more with the face. So making a soft fist, bringing your fist right under your cheekbone, and you're going to find a gentle drag. We're aiming for the soft tissue here. If it feels uncomfortable, bony, nervy, then you're slightly too far forward or you're pressing too hard. So I'm just dragging from the cheekbone all the way down to my lower jaw. Let your jaw go slack. Let your jaw go slack. Yeah, this is a really common place of tension for us. Again, we're just trying to get the nervous system to calm before we move, and we're increasing our sensory input here. Okay, good. And go ahead and shake that out. Okay, let me put this back on here. Just gonna come down to my belly area. We're gonna start with a belly rub. So again, using soft fists or heel of the palm or whatever you'd like. And I'm just gonna have you move your hands in a clockwise direction around your stomach. So you're kind of tracing the outline of the ribs at the top and then coming down to the low belly at the bottom and up and down the sides. If that feels good for you, I like to sink in deeper. You can use your fingers, you can use your knuckles, whatever you've got. And what I'm looking for is the tender areas of this whole region. I talk a lot about this in actually 2 of the self-release workshops that I teach, about how much we hold in our gut. And a gut, I just mean like this whole area. We have a lot of organs in this area. But just like our arm and our shoulder needs a full range of motion, all of our organs have a full range of motion. And when any of those organs get stuck, it can cause back pain, shoulder pain, a lack of range of motion in your spine and your hips and your shoulders and your rib cage. So it's always good to give this area a little bit of love. And then I want you to come, this is something called Erb's Point. You're going to come to the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to mirror you. I'll mirror you. We're going to come to the upper left-hand corner of your abdominal area, kind of just under your rib cage. Okay. And I want you to take that area. And if you can, if you're able to come under the shirt where you've got the tackiness of skin on skin, you can do a little massage with your hands on your belly. Otherwise, I just want you to take that area. If you're able to lift the skin away, like I'm grabbing a roll of skin and I'm lifting it away, and I'm just moving that roll in whatever direction feels good right now. We have 6 nerves that pass through this point. This, I'm sorry, not Erb's Point. This is Cannonbaum's point. Okay, so when we can mobilize this area, can help with a lot of things. Again, I'm mirroring you, so you should all be on the left side of your torso. Good, go ahead and shake the hands out. We're gonna do one more self-release technique and then we'll keep moving here. This one is called Erb's Point. Cannonbaum and Erb and all of these weird names. So we're gonna come, so we have that big chunky muscle on the side. It might not be chunky on everyone, but that muscle on the side of your neck, where if you turn your head, the muscle is gonna pop into your hand. Okay, it's called that sternocleidomastoid. You're gonna go about halfway down that muscle, and you're gonna go to the part of the muscle closer to the back of your neck. Okay, again, you can use your knuckles, or if you're able to pick up the skin and do what we call a skin lift, you're going to do a skin lift. I'm going to give you one more. Oh, that's okay. I have to go run and get it. That's okay. We'll start with this. You can also do this if you have one of those blow up balls, and you can take the ball and you can kind of twist it like this. I'm not going to grab mine right now. But you're just going to take that area and we're not digging in deep. We're just looking to do a little skin lift. We're mobilizing the connective tissue in that area, the muscles in that area. I'm just realizing I forgot to do a recheck. Make sure you do the other side of your neck also. Here, I'll give you a little bit of a zoom in. We'll do the recheck at the end of class. How about that? For time purposes. But normally it's good to do a check and a recheck. Go ahead and shake that out. Okay. Let's talk about the neck and then we'll get into the visual vestibular system. So we're just going to do some neck movements here. So I want you to start. Let me stay zoomed in. I'm going to give you my side profile. Okay. And I want you to start. So just noticing maybe first where your shoulder and your upper back positioning is. Again, if you're able to find a little bit more of a lift where that spine is stacked on top of each other, you can come to that. Remember, don't be scared to use props. If it's helpful to stick like a small towel in the small of your back. And we're gonna do something called head ramping. I call this the pigeon. You're gonna jut your chin forward. This is where most of us live. Notice the back of my neck is short, and I want you here. Try to give yourself, and actively, really actively, we're gonna go far in the other direction. Give yourself as many double chins as you can. Don't worry, nobody can see you. Give yourself as many double chins as you can. Yeah, and you're just gonna find that head movement like you would see a pigeon do. Okay, hopefully as you're doing that, you're feeling some engagement. Ouch. Some engagement in your deep neck flexors, this whole area in here. Okay. Most of us live with that chin jutted forward. So this is just a good reminder to get the head back. But it's also a good reminder, or it's also a good exercise to strengthen the muscles that we need to pull that head back. We're going to leave that head back now. We're going to take our hands or our knuckles or whatever we want, and we're going to create a shelf, like we've got a chin perched on a shelf. Okay, just lightly, very lightly under the chin. And then you're going to find a head translation, like you're doing a dance move from the 80s, gliding the head back and forth. It's not a side bend, it's a glide. So we want your chin to be staying, basically the floor of your mouth to stay parallel with the floor. If the hand isn't helpful, you can take the hand away. Remember to keep that chin tucked back as you're doing this one. Okay, yeah, keep doing that if you'd like. For folks that have a power chair that reclines, I'm just going to give you one more exercise you can do here. You can start to work. So imagine I'm reclined back. I can start to work now on a recline. You can also do this one in bed, where I tuck my chin in, give yourself the double chins. I look down my cheeks, and I lift and I curl my head up, and then I rest my head back. Again, imagine like I've got a chair that reclines here, okay? Lifting off and coming back. Again, when we can establish that strength and that connection through some of these deep neck flexors, these deep neck flexors connect fascially to our deep front line and to our pelvic floor, aka our core. That's our inner core unit. So doing some of these neck strengthening exercises can help find that core connection. Okay, and then just as a test here, so just go ahead, just the head and the neck. Sorry, and I should have said something before this. If you have hardware or a fusion in your neck, these probably aren't for you. So instead of doing them in your neck, do them in your trunk, okay? If you only have one vertebra fused or hardware just at 1 or 2 levels, you have room to play, but feel your body and don't force past your end range. Okay. Okay, moving on. So let's just do a head and neck rotation here. So I want you to look, turn your head as far to the left as you can, turn your head and neck as far to the right as you can. This is a really great movement to use as a check and recheck, because typically, like we did a couple of neck releases just a few minutes ago, and I usually feel a pretty significant difference after I do those. Come back to the center, and then we'll find a side bend of the neck, tilting the head one way and then the other. And you're noticing, for all of these movements, you're noticing which side is harder. Is there any discomfort with this? Is it hard to breathe when I tilt my head one way? Am I feeling any shooting sensations? Hopefully the answer is no for that one. Does one side feel stronger, etc., etc.? Okay, so just noticing, taking notes of that. Okay, we're going to move to the eyes. So go ahead and grab your pencil. So we're kind of in the sensory awareness part of this, talking you through. Go ahead and start with one pencil. We're going to do the pencil push-ups. I'm just going to briefly explain these. You're going to hold, let's maybe just start by looking at the tip of the pencil. You can look at a letter on the pencil if you'd like. You're going to hold the pencil directly in front of your face, in between your two eyes, at arm's length. Okay, you're slowly going to pull that pencil in towards you. The second you start to see, if or when you start to see two pencils, you're going to pull that pencil away from you. If you don't see two pencils, you're going to pull that pencil all the way in so it taps your nose, and then you're going to pull it away. It's okay if the pencil goes blurry, but I don't want you to see two pencils. We should only be seeing one pencil the whole time. This is working on something called eye convergence, the ability of your eyes to focus on an object coming at you. Okay, so the word pencil push-up is coming from this fact that we're pulling the pencil in and out of the face. Maybe do 10 or so of those. Yeah, I'm just going to watch folks here. Yeah, you're moving slow at first, making sure that it doesn't go double. If you feel pretty good with that, you can start to move quicker, but definitely start slow with this one. Okay, pencil push-ups. Doing 10 to 30 of these. I start every single morning I wake up. I do tongue exercises. That's a whole nother topic. We're not going to get into that today. I do tongue exercises, I do eye exercises, and I do vestibular exercises. The pencil push-up is always the first eye exercise I do. It's a really good place to start. Okay, moving to eye saccades. This is jumping the eyes back and forth. So holding the pencils out, you can do them at arm distance. If that's hard for your arms to hold up, you can keep the elbows bent into the side. Okay, just so I kind of stay on the screen here, I'm going to keep my pencils somewhat narrow, but I want you to have those pencils at a good distance away from each other, but only as far away. So my nose is going to stay pointing the camera the whole time, and my eyes are going to jump back from pencil to pencil. Again, you're looking at the tip of the pencil, or you're looking at a letter on the pencil, and my eyes are jumping back and forth from tip to tip as quick as I can without moving my head. Okay, so it's the ability of your eyes to skip over space and focus on something else. For these saccades, I always like to start with the horizontal. There's a lot of reasoning for that I won't go into, but you're going to do it in 3 different directions. You're going to do saccades side to side, up and down, one pencil up, one pencil down. So maybe do about 20 there. I'm sorry, I lied. There's 4 directions. Okay, 20 there. You're going to do 20 at one diagonal. And then you're going to do 20 at the other diagonal. Keep doing the eye saccades as I talk you through this. Notice which of those directions is challenging for you. Again, that just is more information for you. Okay, we're going to do one more here. We're going to do near far. So I want you to hold that pencil back out in front of your face. You're going to look at the tip of the pencil, and then you're going to look at something past the pencil. Maybe there's a painting behind you, a lamp, whatever it might be. You're going to jump your eyes near, far, near, far, near, far. Again, maybe 20 times. Notice what's hard for you. You can always do this one single eye. I talk about that in one of my workshops. But for tonight, you can just do these double eye, jumping near, far, near, far, near, far. Okay. I promise we're going to be moving the body more. We're just going to do the vestibular system, and then we'll jump into that. Okay. So that's good. Yeah, I see a couple of people moving through that. So now coming more into the vestibular system, that inner ear unit. So we're going to do something called the VOR, the Vestibulo Ocular Reflex. You're going to bring that pencil back. If any of this is ever hard for you to hold your arm up, by the way, you can use things around the room, but I recommend starting something that's kind of close to your face because it's a little easier for your eyes. Okay, so holding that pencil out in front of your face, eyes stay locked on the pencil now. Now the head moves. Okay, I'm going to start. We're going to do the exact same thing. I want you to do 20 head shakes like you're saying no, side to side. Eyes stay on the pencil. 20 head shakes up and down. Eyes stay locked on that pencil. 20 head shakes in one diagonal, like your head is doing the disco. 20 head shakes in the other diagonal, like your head is doing the disco. Yeah, and again, I'm just going to watch people here. The bigger you make this movement with your head and the quicker you go, the harder it gets. So perhaps start small and slow so we don't overload the system. Yeah, and that looks really good. Go and relax. Okay. Coming into some more of the movement pieces. So I'm just going to talk through these. I'm going to go one right into the next. I'm going to transition to the chair for this. Okay, we're going to start with some spine and joint movements here. For your spine. Okay, so we're going to do get big, get small. This is pulling in some Bartinief. So I want you to lean forward as far as you safely can and either give your knees a hug or cross your arms over your chest. And then you're going to get really big. Stretch, open the chest, open the arms, open the fingers, look up. Exhale, get small. Inhale, get big. Yeah, that's it. Nice. Exhale, get small. Inhale, get big. The spine and the body flex as you tuck your head in, tuck your chin in. The spine and the body extend and open. Flex, we get small. Extend, we get big. Yes, do one more. Get small and get big. And whatever this movement looks like for you is fine. If you're staying a little bit more in the spine, if it's hard for you to lift your arms, or if it's a smaller movement, that is all fine. We're still getting the same out of this that you would be if it were a bigger movement. Okay. And then we're going to move the head and the tail a little bit here. So I'm going to have you tuck your tail under. So in other words, you're kind of slumping back into the chair and my head drops down. Again, this is the flexion piece. And then we're going to lift, we're going to pull our chest forward and the head lifts. The tail tucks, the head drops. The tail lifts, the head lifts. Okay, keep moving through that. If this is coming more from your rib cage, then that's awesome too. It's the same thing. You're flexing the rib cage back. So I'm thinking about, let me give you my side profile. I'm thinking about rounding the spine and opening the spine. So as much as your tail moves with you, that is fine. If it's just your rib cage moving with you, that's good too. It's all the same. Okay. Good. Coming back to, let's see, we're going to go side to side. So coming into what we call a rib translation. Folks like to have their hands on different areas. I kind of like to have, like my hands are on like I'm about to scold somebody. Hands are high on my ribs. You can also just have hands on the side of the torso or on your lap, okay? What we're doing here is we're translating the ribs from side to side. This gives our belly a massage. It gives some of our organs a massage. But notice my ribs and my shoulders are staying parallel to the floor. So I'm not side bending, I'm not tilting. I'm gliding the ribs one way, I'm gliding the ribs the other way. Yeah, nice, that looks good. See a couple people there doing that. You might hear some stomach sounds for this one. Okay, we're gonna put that all together and we're gonna hula hoop our ribs around our pelvis. So again, hands can be high or low. And we're gonna draw a big circle, moving our ribs around our pelvis. If you're short on time, you do 3 in each direction. If you've got all the time in the world, maybe you do 10 in each direction. If this is usually loosey-goosey for you and this usually feels good, maybe you skip this one when you're short on time. Okay, so you can tailor the program, your program, to what you need the most. Okay, I'm just looking at my notes here. Great. We're going to do some of the hip hikes. So we worked on this one in my Strengthening Your Sleepier Side workshop. So I want you to imagine, you can use your hands on your chair. I want you to imagine like you just sat in gum under one of your butt cheeks. Okay, and you're like, ew, gross. You're trying to lift your butt cheek out of the gum. Yep. And then you sat in gum under the other butt cheek and you're like, ew, gross. Okay. Okay, and you're just alternating side to side. It's not cheating to use your hands because you're just we're creating a closed chain exercise, which I talk about. And we're creating more stability for us to push off of, to find a hip hike on one side and a hip hike on the other side. If you know what your sleepier side is, then maybe you do 10 extra repetitions on that sleepier side. Okay, if you know which one is your sleepier side, you can check out my workshop if you're kind of confused about which one is harder for you. Okay, and then finally, the last spinal movement we'll do here is our rotation. We did a little bit of belly massage, which can be helpful with the kidneys to help release some of our rotation. So we're just going to come right into it. And we're going to combine some cross-lateral work here. So we're going to take hand to opposite knee, and we're going to turn and rotate, trying to keep our skeleton and our spine stacked on top of each other. Bring your head, your neck, and your eyes with you. What is the furthest thing behind you that you can see? And then switch. Hand to opposite knee, connect those two sides of the brain, and rotate. What's the furthest thing behind you could see? It should feel like you're straining your eyes. Back to the center and switch. And you're just going back and forth. Maybe you're doing an inhale to rotate and an exhale to center. Maybe you do 6 if you're short on time, and you do 16 if you've got all the time in the world, right? Okay. Okay, so we've got all of the spinal movements there. We're going to move into, my computer's going to freeze on me. We're going to move into some of the shoulder work. There we go. Okay, this is the last thing here. So we'll start. Shoulder blades move in 6 directions. So let's just start with a shrug up and a shrug down. Okay, I think we're all probably pretty familiar with this one. Good. And we're going to bring the arms out in front of us. They can be bent or straight. I want your torso to stay upright. Let me give you my side profile again. Okay. We're going to push. Wait, sorry, hang on. Let me come into a good position before I. So instead of rounding the whole spine, I just want you to push the arms forward and then pull them back. Push just the arms and the shoulder blades forward, pull them back. So this movement here is our shoulder blades moving in towards each other as they pull back. Okay, so it's like the typical squeezing the shoulder blades you might hear with people cueing you, and then pushing the shoulder blades away. Shoulder blades together, shoulder blades away. This movement alone can be really hard for people, especially when we move it into a loaded position, which I talk about at my shoulder workshop. Okay, find that you can use your lap, but finding a low table or something, you can be on your elbows. This table is a little low to be on my elbows, so I'm just going to stay on my hands. And you're doing the same position, but it's loaded. It's closed chain, meaning my hands are grounded, they're on something, and I'm doing the same movement I was just doing with the shoulder blades moving, but I'm loading through the shoulder blades, which is a really healthy way for the bones of your shoulders to adjust to load. And by load, I just mean weight. And it also really helps maintain just the whole rhythm of your shoulder blades. So doing them loaded is really helpful too. Okay, and then lastly, we'll bring the arms out to the side. I'm just going to stay at this angle here and just doing a few snow angels, bringing the arms up overhead. This is another movement that is really great as a check and a recheck. Yeah, do a few more of those. I'm just going to put these around my elbows, and I'll show you the last few from the TheraBand workshop that I taught to finish out this program for you. So you want to move, like I said, you're trying to move all of the parts of you, as many parts of you as you can. This goes for your joints, your shoulders, your spine, your rib cage. Don't forget your rib cage is a joint. Okay, that should be good-ish. I can adjust that if I need to. Okay, I know I'm cheating, but for time purposes, let me just get everything at a good angle here. Okay, I'm just going to give you some of the greatest hits of the TheraBand exercise. I recommend whenever you're doing shoulder work to focus on pulling more than pushing. I can say with great confidence here, our society and folks in wheelchairs do enough pushing as is. We're a very forward flexed society. So anything we can do to kind of reset that and work more of our back muscles by doing these pulling movements is going to be really, really good for us. It's going to be good for our shoulders. It's going to be good for our backs, and it's going to be good for our core. So right now I'm just starting with a row here. Okay, I've got the cuffs on my elbows, above my elbows. Sorry, again, I'm cheating a little bit here, but I'd be back in my chair, pulling and then releasing. Try to keep the elbows, you can do it both ways. You can keep elbows low, and you can also bring elbows up for a high row. But again, for greatest hits purposes, I recommend keeping the elbows low and tucked in. Okay, and then we'll bring that into a fly. So opening the arms up if you can, and then closing back together. And my arms are at about shoulder height here, finding all of those muscles in between my shoulder blades. Okay, and then we're going to hold, and we're going to find a snow angel, exactly what we just did. But now we've got resistance, so we have to keep that tension pulling back. You know, again, you're doing 10 reps, you're doing 20 reps, whatever works for you. Okay, those three are my favorite for facing towards the anchor. If we turn and face sideways, or just crossed over the chest, and now I've got a little bit of resistance as I rotate. Again, arms can be out or in. Rotating away from the anchor and with control to come back in. What you're trying to avoid is the snapping of the body. Remember, you control the TheraBand doesn't control you. And then same thing here, you can also find a one-armed fly from this side position. Okay. Just going to turn around. I'm going to give you a few more facing in the opposite direction. You might need help to set this one up, especially if you're using TheraBand from an anchor point. Okay, can we still see me here? Kind of, sort of. Okay, you're starting with a reverse fly. So now we're working more of the front of the body, still working the core. All of these work the core, but we're working more of the chest. So that's why I say you do everything with your chest, right? You're pushing, you're either pushing all day, you're on your computer, you're eating, whatever we're doing, we're using the front of our body. So that's why I say if you're short on time, do the pulling ones first. We can add in a rotation. I'm reaching and I'm rotating, reaching and rotating. So those are two of my favorites from this position. Remember, the higher the arms go, the harder these exercises get, because my inner core and my outer core have to kick on a little bit more so that I'm not schlumping or being pulled backwards. Okay, just gonna step out of this for a moment. So you see that progression with the whole exercise program, but also with something like the shoulders. We're doing something where we're tapping, we're calming the nervous system, we're warming up. Visual, vestibular work, our range of motion with the neck, with the shoulders, with the spine, and then we add resistance. Resistance can look like TheraBands, it can look like weights, it can even look like swimming. If there's any swimmers out there, this is a great warm-up to do before that. So you're easing the body into movement, you're prepping it, and then you're easing it into movement, and then you're easing it into loaded movement if that is appropriate for you. Yes, and then lastly, we could finish, we didn't do this in the beginning, but we could finish with some kind of a check and a recheck, where maybe we're testing the neck range of motion, the shoulder range of motion, my spinal rotation, and I'm seeing if any of those things improved. But overall, if you're just trying to get a good solid workout in, something like this program, you're hopefully going to feel better afterwards, and especially if you do it over time, you'll see some improvements. And I think that's it, if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So a couple of questions that I'll be able to answer. One question involved Rachel's previous 16 video recordings. Yes, we do have them. They are all on our website. Tell you what I'm going to do. When we send you the recording on Thursday morning, you're going to have to do a little bit of work on your end, but I will include the link that has the library to all the videos that we have done, including the 16 from Rachel. You're going to have to do some search, but they're all in there, and I would encourage you to check them out. And number two, in terms of the TheraBands that she used, some time ago when we did the resistance band training, Rachel, I think you gave a link to kind of a set of TheraBands that you use, that you recommend. Again, I will include that link for those of you that are curious as to what kind of TheraBands Rachel is using. Anything else on the equipment side, Rachel, that you can think of?
No, I think, yeah, no, that was all I used today.
Okay, great. So first question is someone who experiences a lot of spasticity, upper body spasticity. Should they work through these movements even when they're experiencing these spasticities?
Yeah, I would say that, well, I would be curious, we were moving kind of quick today through that prep of calming the nervous system and all of that. But for anyone, whether you have spasticity in the upper body or the lower body, doing all of the techniques that I've given you to help calm the nervous system, so any of the self-release technique workshops, and then the very first workshop I taught, which kind of talked about something called the polyvagal theory. Yeah, and that's the very first one. Any of those techniques that help calm your, play with those. I maybe gave you like 30 or 40 overall, and see what works for you. See if any of those help calm your toner spasticity. If they don't, it might be helpful before you do the movements, especially the loaded movements. You want to do movements that are slow and grounded. So whatever that looks like for you, if you've got, you're saying upper body, so I'm just going to assume, let's say you've got like a spastic shoulder and or arms, like an arm that's kind of tucked into your chest. Giving your hand some kind of a feedback, and my tennis ball is behind me, but imagine I'm holding a tennis ball. Giving your hand some feedback, and or if someone is helping you with this, they would hold your hand and you would slowly unfurl. They'd have a hand on your shoulder for that for that kind of proximal biofeedback, if you will, and then they would have a hand on your hand, and you would be slowly unfurling through some of that spasticity in your upper arm. Slow movements, grounded, closed chain movements, meaning you're holding on to something, are also going to be helpful spasticity. If it's in the lower body, things like rocking, swaying, bouncing, again, those are all ways to calm the nervous system that can help you work through that spasticity.
Okay, great. Next question from a C5 quad. He or she is asking, I'm sorry, I don't know the gender, but for the exercises where you lean forward and back, should I try to use a folded sheet or something to wrap around my stomach and chair so I don't fall forward?
Yeah. Yeah, for any safety, for any of these movements, safety is obviously always number one. So if that means where like there's a seatbelt on this chair I wasn't using, I could have buckled that. Using a sheet, using a gate belt, using a seatbelt, yeah, anything that where you're a little unsure, like, am I going to fall forward? Am I going to fall to the side? Is the chair going to tip back? Do you have the anti-tippers on your chair? You definitely want to check in before you do all of those movements and make sure that you're secure, because even if you think you don't need a gait belt, if your body, if you're neurologically, if you perceive threat, and I put in quotes, unconsciously, your body is going to tighten in ways that you won't even be conscious of. We call it a threat bucket. So when you cross this this threshold where your body is perceiving threat, everything locks up and nothing is going to be as fluid or efficient. So even if you don't think you need it, you could always try putting that sheet or that gait belt around you. And typically it actually improves movement because you feel safer and your nervous system feels safer.
Right. And Rachel, many of these can be done on a bed as well, right? So that because some people are limited on the length of time they could stay in their chair.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I mean, even the visual vestibular work that I showed, doing seated, you could totally do just lying on your back in a bed. You could do a lot of the shoulder movements in a bed. And then you could do stuff in a bed that you can't do seated. You could try some rolling. Yeah, and I'll be going over a little bit more of that tomorrow. But yeah, absolutely. Any of these that you can translate to a bed, do in a bed.
Okay, great. We don't have any additional questions. So as Rachel mentioned, tomorrow night she's going to be doing a similar presentation on for paraplegics. Same time, and if you wish to register for that, there is still time to do so. And as I mentioned, Rach has been using some specific types of equipment. I'll be sure to list those in the email that you would all receive on Thursday morning with the link to the video recordings of not just tonight's presentation, but also tomorrow night's presentation in the event that you feel that you might be able to take away something from that for your purposes. So thanks once again to our generous donors for making these events possible. Thank you, Rach, for doing back-to-back evenings here of these two really important sort of summary presentations, very nicely done. And thanks for everyone who tuned in, and hope to see as many of you as possible tomorrow night. If not, look for the recording email on Thursday morning. And have a good evening, everyone. And you too, Rach.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Thanks everyone. See you next time.
Bye-bye.